A text says, "You're on my mind." A bouquet from 1-800-Flowers says, "You're my everything." Heartfelt moments belong in the real world, not just your phone. For 50 years, 1-800-Flowers has helped millions of people make memories that'll last a lifetime with gifts they'll cherish forever. Their expertly curated arrangements and gift baskets ship nationwide with a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Don't wait for the next big moment. Make it when you visit 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast.
Hey listeners, this is Peter and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts. In the summer of 1794, George Washington did something no American president has done before or since. He put on his military uniform. He rode at the head of an army of 13,000 soldiers, and he led that army against his own citizens. The cause was whiskey. The stakes were the survival of the federal government itself. Today we'll talk about the Whiskey Rebellion, the crisis that forced the new American Republic to answer a question it had been avoiding since the Constitution was ratified. Who exactly was in charge? A History Brief today returns to the History Shorts conversation series Vault and a chat with New York Times bestselling author Jeffrey Rosen. A quick word from our sponsors.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities, so do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This day in history. On May 6, 1937, the German airship Hindenburg burst into flames while attempting to land in New Jersey, killing 36 people and marking the end of the airship era. On May 6, 1954, British runner Roger Bannister became the first person to run a mile in under 4 minutes, breaking what had once seemed an impossible barrier. Story of the day. To understand this rebellion, you kind of have to understand the world that the western Pennsylvania farmers inhabited in 1791. These were not wealthy men. They were subsistence farmers and small distillers carving a living out of the Appalachian frontier, a world of difficult terrain, poor roads, and almost no access to eastern markets. Grain was their primary crop, but grain was heavy, perishable, and nearly impossible to transport profitably across the mountains to the coastal cities where money existed. Whiskey, however, was different. You could distill a bushel of grain into a few gallons of whiskey, load it on a pack horse, and send it east, or use it as currency among neighbors, since hard money was chronically scarce on the frontier. Whiskey was not a luxury for these men. It was how the economy of the western frontier actually worked. Alexander Hamilton understood this perfectly. He just didn't particularly care. Hamilton, as Secretary of the Treasury, had a problem. The new federal government had inherited an enormous debt from the Revolutionary War, the debts of the Continental Congress, the debts of the individual states. Hamilton's solution was to have the federal government assume all of that debt, establish the country's creditworthiness, and pay it down through taxation. The tax that he proposed in 1791, a tax on distilled spirits, was the first domestic tax ever levied by the federal government. It was structured in a way that hit small independent distillers dramatically harder than the large commercial operations. Large distillers paid a flat annual fee that worked out to a modest per gallon rate. Small distillers, the frontier farmers, paid per gallon, with no flat fee option at a higher effective rate. To the farmers of Western Pennsylvania, this was not a revenue measure at all. It was a declaration of war by the Eastern financial establishment against the people the revolution had promised to liberate. The resistance began almost immediately. Tax collectors arriving in Western Pennsylvania were met with a reception that ranged from refusal to pay to outright violence. Several were tarred and feathered. One had his horse stolen and his hair cut off. A tax collector named Robert Johnson was assaulted, robbed, and then left tied to a tree in the woods. The federal government's response, sending in more collectors, attempting prosecutions, only deepened the anger. In July of 1794, a U.S. Marshal arrived at the farm of a distiller named William Miller with a summons requiring him to appear in federal court in Philadelphia, a journey of hundreds of miles at his own expense. The next day, a crowd of several hundred men attacked the home of General John Neville, the regional tax inspector. Neville's house was burned to the ground. The rebellion had arrived. Washington's response was shaped in large part by Hamilton, who saw the rebellion as an existential test of federal authority. The Whiskey Rebellion was not, Hamilton argued, simply about tax or a tax dispute. It was a direct challenge to the principle that the federal government had the power to enforce its laws. If it backed down, if it negotiated or retreated in the face of armed resistance, it would signal to every faction in a country, in every state, that federal authority was optional. And Washington agreed. He invoked the Militia Acts, called up troops from 4 different states, and in an act without precedent in American history, personally took command of the force. He rode into Pennsylvania before handling field command to General Henry Lee, but his personal involvement sent a message that no one could misread. The President of the United States was willing to lead an army against American citizens to enforce a tax. Sounds familiar? Well, to everyone there, it kind of did. It resembled the American Revolution. By the time the Federal Army arrived in western Pennsylvania in late October of 1794, the rebellion had largely dissolved. The sight of 13,000 soldiers, larger than most of the armies Washington had commanded during the Revolution, had a clarifying effect on the frontier. Most of the rebel leaders simply fled. A handful of men were arrested. 2 were convicted of treason. Washington pardoned them. Not a single person was actually executed. The army marched home, and the whiskey tax remained on the books. So, what had actually been settled? Well, on one level, the answer is straightforward. The federal government had demonstrated, for the first time ever, that it could and would enforce its laws by force if necessary. The Constitution was not merely a document, it was a functioning authority with teeth. That demonstration mattered enormously in a world that was watching the American experiment with a mixture of hope and skepticism. But the deeper questions that the rebellion raised were not so easily resolved. The farmers' grievances were indeed real. The tax was genuinely regressive, structured in a way that favored wealth over labor, Eastern interests over Western ones. Thomas Jefferson, watching from retirement, saw the rebellion not as a threat to the Republic, but as evidence that Hamilton's financial system was the real threat. That concentrating power and wealth in the federal government at the expense of ordinary citizens was precisely what the Revolution had been fought against. When Jefferson won the presidency in 1800, one of the first acts was to repeal the whiskey tax entirely. He had been making the same argument as the farmers of western Pennsylvania. He just made it with votes instead of rifles. The Whiskey Rebellion sits at the beginning of an argument that American democracy, well, has never fully resolved. How much power does the federal government have? Who does it serve? When does resistance to authority become legitimate? And when does it become insurrection? Washington's army settled that question for 1794. It did not settle it, however, forever. The History Brief. The following conversation with Jeffrey Rosen, a New York Times bestselling author, can be found in its entirety in the back catalog of the History Shorts podcast. You could simply search for it wherever you're listening to this episode.
Jefferson himself thought that cities were wicked and immoral and wanted to ban all trade with them. So this basic division, though, between agrarian versus rural and financiers versus farmers and producers is central to American politics. Many think it's really central to defining the Constitutional Convention. And that economic aspect of American politics is so important for helping to understand our constitutional debates. Jefferson, of course, would have been alarmed by the rise of urbanism and the merchant classes, and most of all by the vast expansion of federal power, in particular of executive power. It's really important to see what the sources are when we try to imagine what the framers would say today, and also to highlight the differing points of view. There's no single answer to what the framers would think. Different framers had different points of view.
Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you are enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars at buymeacoffee.com or become a Patreon member to enjoy these episodes ad-free. Both links can be found on our website at www.historyshortspodcast.com. I also hope you guys check out our new YouTube channel where we have different series that are not part of this main feed. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.